Salutations of Salutations, and today we've got a new kind of video for you guys. Now, I don't typically cover drama pieces. I'm usually, well, I guess it sort of is drama the way that I tend to go about it, but I'm not usually covering drama. I'm usually covering a weapon in a video game. But today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be covering the Stop Killing Games initiative. Now, there's been this whole push on two different sides of, like, this is what the primary people that support the movement are saying, this is what the people that are supporting a creator are saying, and I haven't seen very many middle ground pieces about it. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go over the pages, we're just gonna read them. And that's really gonna be the majority of the video. I might talk about my opinions on it at the end of the video, but I'm gonna cover the actual pages, the websites. So the Stop Killing Games website, the Stop Killing Games past actions and result page on their website, the European Citizens Initiative page on the website. Then we're gonna go to the European Citizens Initiative page on the European Union page. So the EU has a website that tracks all of their current initiatives. And we're going to be covering it, and for disclosure, the commission registration number, it will also be shown on screen when I go to that page. And there's a lot of things I want to cover with this, so let's get right into it. First, here is the original page, Stop Killing Games. Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. An increased number of video games are sold effectively as goods with no stated expiration date, but designated to be completely unplayable as soon as support for the publisher ends. This practice is a form of planned obsolescence and is not only detrimental to customers, but makes preservation effectively impossible. Furthermore, the legality of this practice is largely untested in many countries. So when it comes to the legality section, the main things that I think they're referencing based off of this initial page is right to repair clauses, because when you release a product that you brick at the end of life, and you prevent people from repairing, that very much violates a idea of right to repair. But that's just a interpretation of what this could mean. So let's move on to the next section. Over the past year, we have successfully escalated complaints on this problem to consumer agencies in France, Germany, and Australia, and have brought forth petitions for new law on this problem to various countries. A list of the actions taken to date can be viewed here, which is the next page. As of 2025, most consumer action on this matter has concluded, and we are awaiting decisions on it from several governments. However, there are a few remaining avenues left where people can participate if they are eligible. And then here's the big one, the European Citizens Initiative. And this is their giant, like, sign-up page. This is their description of what the initiative is. Like, what an European Citizens Initiative is. It's not exactly covering their initiative, it's just what an initiative is in general. Then they have the petition to the UK government section, which I think that's ending or has ended soon. This may be the one that ends at the end of the month. I don't remember, but that's not the main one I'm going to be covering. There's also this section here for a guide for submitting information that could be sent in assistance with the crew scenario over in France. So this could be something that if you owns the crew and you are in France or French, then go ahead and check this out. It's on their website. I don't see any reason for them to be misleading anybody with this. And this is their little disclaimer talking about how other people can help with it, or ways that you can help if you're not from these countries that are effective for these movements. And then contact information and stuff. Now, the past actions and results page. So, since April of 2024, we have taken various actions on the issue of challenging the legality of publishers destroying video games they have already sold. Aside from proposing a new law, most legal action revolved around complaints submitted on the game The Crew, published by Ubisoft, as it was an ideal candidate to test the legality of this business practice. Below is a summary of all activities we have conducted that have either concluded or now underway. This is talking about the European Citizens Initiative with it. This is moving on to this section is talking about answers, or, hold on, worked with the member of European Parliament in support of, to submit questions to the Commission on legality of publishers destroying games. So the results of this, because they actually they have the thing and then results. Oh, so we should take a look here. So this is still ongoing. Then for this one, their answers imply video games of this nature could be violating a directive, and it is up to the member states to resolve this. Okay, interesting. Submitted complaints on the crew to the European Consumer Centres Network. A dead end, there was no consistency from the various offenses and was likely a redundant measure towards contacting the DGCCRF. Okay. I don't exactly know much about how this works. So this is the UK initiative. Submitted a government petition in 2024 to UK Parliament on the practice of publishers destroying video games already sold. It ended prematurely due to Parliament dissolving and a new one has been relaunched. And then there's a link to signing this new one. Then they have one for all of these different locations. I'm just gonna scroll over these so that you guys can read this on your own. I don't need to read out to you guys, I hope. I hope you guys can read. But this wasn't exactly the main content I wanted to cover, so we're just gonna scroll over this. And I love it how the FTC has given no response. Thank you, FTC, for still being the most worthless for still being the most worthless commission on the planet. All right, so here is the European Citizens Initiative page on their website, the ACI. So this is their take on what it's supposed to do. Video games are being destroyed. Most video games work indefinitely, but a growing number are designed to stop working as soon as publishers end support. This effectively robs customers. Destroying games as an art form and is unnecessary. Our movement seeks to pass new law in the EU to put an end to this practice. Our proposal would do the following. Require video games sold to remain in a working state when support ends. Require no connections to the publisher after support ends. Not interfere with any business practices while a game is still being supported. And then they have the signature page, and they give you guides for each location as to how to do it. But that's not the end of this video. Now we have the actual page. Let me move this over here. There we go. So the objectives. This initiative calls to require publishers that sell or license video games to consumers in the European Union, or related features and assets sold for video games they operate, to leave said video games in a functional, playable state. Specifically, the initiative seeks to prevent the remote disabling of video games by the publishers, before providing reasonable means to continue functioning of said video games without the involvement from the side of the publisher. The initiative does not seek to acquire ownership of said video games, associate intellectual rights, or monetization rights. Neither does it expect the publisher to provide resources for the said video game once they discontinue it while leaving it in a reasonably functional, playable state. We have a show more information section. This is mostly contact information for people hosting the initiative. And this is all on their website. Now, let's go to the actual full initiative page. So this is covering the objectives, which we just read off, and this is covering the annex, which is, again, the background for this content. Let's move... Whoops. Whoa. I didn't know I could highlight that on OBS. That's interesting. Let's just move this over here. So, annex. Video games have grown into an industry with billions of customers worth hundreds of billions of euros. During this time, a specific business practice in the industry has been slowly emerging that is not only an assault on basic consumer rights, but is destroying the medium itself. An increasing number of publishers are selling video games that are required to connect through the internet to the game publisher or phone home to function. While this is not a problem in itself, when support ends for these types of games, very often publishers simply sever the connection necessary for the game to function, proceed to destroy all working copies of the game, and implement extensive measures to prevent the customer from repairing the game in any way. As I said with the original line, that was kind of the intent that I got from it, was the whole right to repair stuff. This practice is effectively robbing customers of their purchases and makes restoration impossible. Besides being an affront on consumer rights, video games themselves are unique creative works, like film or music. one cannot be simply substituted for another. By destroying them, it represents a creative loss for everyone involved and erases history in ways not possible in other mediums. Existing laws and consumer agencies are ill-prepared to protect customers against this practice. The ability for a company to destroy an item it has already sold to the customer long after the fact is not something that normally occurs in other industries. With license agreements required to simply run the game, many existing consumer protections are circumvented. This practice challenges the concept of ownership itself, where the customer is left with nothing after buying a game. Now, there are some vaguely similar aspects to this messaging when it comes to other sources of media, such as movies, where everything being hosted on a streaming service, when it's taken off those streaming services, is no longer available, and that makes it no longer available to the public, which is a form of destroying a form of media. But that hasn't been a big push from what I've seen. It has at least nowhere near as much in there as it has been in the video game industry. And when it comes to that, it's less because the actual media was made in a way that was anti-consumer. It was because the avenue that you were utilizing to consume that media is the problem. So there are nuances that are different between those, but I feel like it kind of goes hand in hand with those concepts, in my opinion. Next down here. We wish to invoke Article 17, Section 1 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. And that's the technical page, but it doesn't have a hyperlink. I kind of wish it did, but oh well. No one may be deprived of his or her possessions, except in the public interest and in the cases and under the conditions provided for by law, subject to fair compensation being paid in good time for their loss. This practice deprives European citizens of their property by making it so that they lose access to their product an indeterminate/arbitrary amount of time after the point of sale. We wish to see this remedied at the core of this initiative. We also invoke Title 15 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union and the following TFEU articles as our justification for the Union's imperative to respond to this initiative. Article 169, per Section 1, the EU has an obligation to promote the interests of consumers and to ensure a high level of consumer protection. To protecting the health, safety, and economic interests of the consumers, we believe this practice infringes upon and requires correction to be commensurate with the EU's obligation. The actions taken in response to this initiative must supersede any end-user license agreements associated with these games. Okay. Article 12. Consumer protection requirements shall be taken into account in defining and implementing other union policies and activities. Given that this practice extends across member states and beyond the EU, the union's actions regarding this practice ought to keep consumer protection in mind. The actions taken in response to this initiative must supersede any end-user license agreements associated with video games. Article 114, Section 3. The Commission, in its proposals envisaged in paragraph 1 concerning health, safety, environmental protection, and consumer protection, will take as a base a high level of protection within their respective powers. The European Parliament and the Council will also seek to achieve this objective. This practice determines the high level of consumer protection that the Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council takes as the basis of law in the Union, and their objectives of establishing and maintaining the functioning of an internal market as described in Section 1 of this article and Article 26 TFEU. So, a lot of citations for a lot of laws. The main things here that I looked at were, let's see here, defining implementing other union policies and activities, the superseding end-user license agreements associated with video games. That was a big one that was kind of just like, that's pretty cool, and that's on a couple of the sections here. That line kind of is needed because of lines in user agreements such as Blizzard's, where they have the right to just take the game away from you or access to the game away from you at all, just without exceptions. If I remember right, that's how that was written. It was just a blanket statement, and there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But that's the initiative, and there's a lot here, and a lot of good in my opinion for the industry, but there's also been this idea that the objectives, a part of it is to say that live service games are meant to be utilized indefinitely, or meant to be serviced indefinitely, and I don't read that anywhere. I don't see that anywhere. I didn't say those words at all while I was reading off these pages. Now, when it comes to it, you could see requiring publishers that sell licenses to video games leave said games in a functional playable state. You could potentially argue that, but I don't see that being a viable argument, because there are other ways of leaving a game in a functional or playable state that's not maintaining them forever. And I don't see this being applied retroactively, especially with all of the games that have already died. I don't see this being applied retroactively at all. And I don't see it being feasible to apply it retroactively. But applying it for the future would be a very good idea in my opinion. There are plenty of ways around this line. For example, they could change the system to be a peer-to-peer hosted network. So a individual who's playing one of these live service mass multiplayer online games, they could change it to be a either private server hosting system where individuals can host a server, sort of like Java Minecraft, or they could change it to a peer-to-peer hosting system where a individual client can host a base server and connect with other peers, having a peer-to-peer system. Or they could make it a offline game, which this one seemed to be the least favorable of the options that I've seen proposed, that they could make it an offline game and then allow the community to repair the game to the functioning state that they would want to play the game at. There are plenty of ways that companies could go about abiding by this, and I'm not a game developer, so there's probably more ways that they could do it that they could think of, and that's the point of like creativity in an artwork, is it not? That's all the informational sections about this that I wanted to talk about, and I definitely see that there is a lot of things that people have just blown out of proportion, but that's all I gotta say on that. But I very much support this initiative for reasons other than the objectives listed. It's not just that this seeks to do these things, it's also an avenue and a case study that we can utilize to push other changes in the industry that are egregious to consumers, such as aggressive privacy policies and aggressive technologies being incorporated in games that realistically shouldn't be. For example, taking a look at the Call of Duty whole stuff with the cameras being, like, camera DLL files being accessed despite the cameras not being actively on, and so it's enabling cameras or something. I think that was a patent that they were pushing for. Kind of crazy. Getting access to camera information without the individual turning on their camera, like, actively needing to turn on their camera, and then that information being filtered into an AI. I think that was some other stuff that was said, allegedly. It's crazy, and to prevent stuff like that from being mainstream in the gaming industry, the primary way of doing that would probably be through systems like this, where we create an initiative and we push and make requests to governments to be like, hey, this stuff is ridiculous, and these corporations make a whole bunch of money by doing it, even if it cuts out half their player base. So we can't do anything about it. Government, can you do something, please? And there are definitely scenarios like that, and it's a lot more than just games. This kind of push is also something that probably should be thought about when it comes to the privacy sector. There are plenty of alternatives, but they're a lot less convenient, a lot more difficult for people to go and utilize these alternatives, especially when people just don't want to research it. So there's a lot of things that we could talk about that this could impact. But that's all I want to really talk about this video, was mostly just, hey, stop killing games. I highly recommend taking a look at it, reading it for yourself, reading it even after I've read it to you. Go back and read it to make sure that I didn't skip anything or apply biases that wasn't intended. And I want to hold a conversation with you guys. What are your thoughts on stop killing games? What are your thoughts on the idea of holding these initiatives in the first place? But that's all I got for you guys. StereoLotus77, signing off.